So we're going to pair a new video series with the other series that we have going on. We're doing the 2018 look at divisions, see where they're going into 2019, and what storylines we have throughout the divisions. But today, we're doing something different. It's going to be another couple episode series where we're actually going to go over a bunch of different shows and a bunch of different controversies that happened month by month throughout 2018. We've been doing a UFC 2018 review by division, and we're going to see what happened through the progression of the year month by month in this video. If you enjoy the end of the year videos or you enjoy any of the talking about sports, MMA, gaming videos, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and come back for some more content later down the line, and leave some comments so that we can discuss future topics in MMA. So we're going to open up, obviously, with January 2018, and the UFC held 3 events in January. Fight Night Stevens vs. Choi opened up the year for us, and that was a hell of a fight. 2 fighters coming off of good 2017 campaigns in the featherweight division. Stevens came riding a win over Gilbert Melendez, while Doo Ho Choi came off the massive war with Cub Swanson. The result of this fight kind of picked up steam for Jeremy Stevens going into the rest of 2018. He kind of had a pretty wild campaign this year for Stevens. We'll get into that later down the line in the year. But he displayed a vicious power, and it put his name back in the circulation of title contenders at featherweight. This was also the event where the infamous 30% line started a little beef between Kamaru Usman, Dana White, and a lot of the YouTube comments, Twitter trolls, and other ways had their way of finding creative ways to bash the Nigerian Nightmare for his ridiculous comment following the Emil Meek fight. I thought I'd mention, going back to watching this interview, when Kamaru Usman went into the Nigerian banter when he was doing whatever language he was doing, the following comments, I would love to see him use that again, because that was pretty cool the way he did that, and it kind of went unnoticed because of the 30%. This was also the only fight card that saw Paige Van Zandt in 2018. She lost a 3-round decision to Jessica Rose Clark. This was when Van Zandt broke her arm, and her next appearance is going to be in 2019 against Rachel Ostovich early this year. In 2019, early next year. Uriah Hall was also pulled off this card due to fainting while trying to make weight. I know I'm touching on some small topics, but this was news. Uriah Hall was a big up-and-coming fighter, huge waves on the Ultimate Fighter, and then he just had a lot of issues making weight, a lot of issues with the small little things, and Dana White was brought out to question Hall's commitment to the UFC game. So that wrapped up a fight night that actually held a lot of storylines starting off 2018, and then we got into a massive card, UFC 220. Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic, and the main event went on to show us how fast UFC promotions can turn on you, like turning on a light switch on and off. That's how fast this can switch. It was a split second, and Ngannou went from the vicious and most feared up-and-coming superstar, like Mike Tyson-esque, to out-of-shape, one-sided stand-up fighter, can't wrestle, doesn't know the full game of MMA. Like the promotion for Ngannou going into this fight was insane, and as much as I criticized the UFC for promoting the talent, as I just did, it's their job, and throughout this year, it kind of resolved itself for Ngannou. He's kind of gaining steam to going into a Cain Velasquez fight, and I know that the job is for the UFC to benefit their fighters by hyping them up as much as possible, and at least everybody knows the name Francis Ngannou now. However, the UFC 220 main event specifically only benefited one man going into 2018, and that was Stipe Miocic. All the promotion that went into Ngannou just made it even more dominant image for Stipe Miocic. He tired out and dominated the contender on his way to the title defense in the 5-round fight, and he holds the record for title defenses now at 3 going in after this event. Conveniently, this card also showcased the dominant light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier. He defeated Volkan Ozdemir in seriously dominant fashion. He landed the crucifix, stopping Volkan by TKO with punches because he wasn't defending himself. This card was easily the one that set up, obviously, the massive fight that is coming in the future of 2018, which was going to be Miocic versus DC. DC coming up to challenge for the heavyweight title, go for the 2 belts. This card rounded out with some really good talent. Calvin Kattar TKO'd Shane Burgos, handing Burgos his first loss. Fan favorite striker Jean Vellante picked up a win, and Rob Font defeated Thomas Almeida, who was an up-and-coming coming into 2018 by TKO. May I mention that all the fight hype after this was DC calling out Stipe, Dana talking about how he wanted to see Stipe versus DC, and it led perfectly into the card that we will see later down the line in 2018. But moving on to round out January, we had another fight night. No, we had UFC on Fox. Jacare Souza versus Derek Brunson 2. showcasing a rematch between these two from the Strikeforce days. This happened all the way back in 2012. It was on the same card as Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate 1, where Souza finished Brunson by TKO. The rematch had the very similar result, but instead of the finish coming by punches, it came by a kick to the head and some brief ground and pound. As for the rest of this card, Mirsad Bektic, he hasn't fought again in 2018. I don't think, he hasn't, but he's an up-and-coming fighter, and his win was really, really good. Fight of the night bonus, body punch finish in the first, showed he was seriously impressive in that fight and was scheduled to fight on this Holloway card against the up-and-coming fighter Renato Moicano, but it didn't happen. It was canceled for some reason. We also had Andre Fili, George Giuseppe, and Drew Dober. They all picked up wins on the main card. So now we're moving into February. UFC Fight Night Machida versus Anders. This fight card was actually pretty wild when I was looking at it. As to where we are now, a lot of notable changes came from this card, and it's incredible that some of the things that happened, not notable changes from this card, but notable changes that happened after this card. So let's start up top with the main event. Machida, no longer in the UFC, but rides a 3-fight win streak starting here. This was somewhat a controversial fight, but a lot of the time when MMA goes to the judges, we get a decision that tends to happen like this. Poor Anders, though, this year was pretty rough for him, and I've started to enjoy. I like Anders because of something that happened in UFC Toronto. He actually came up into the audience after his fight to chill with his family. It looked like. Good for him. That guy's a legend. After a war, he just comes up and chills with his fam. That was beautiful. But it was a pretty rough year in 2018 for him. Hopefully he can bounce back in 2019. He had lost a fight going into this one, and now has a 1-3 record in his last 4 fights. He was undefeated coming into 2018 with 2 tough decision losses. I'm also a big fan of Anders, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in 2019. And I might like to see him, if I was going to say anything about Anders, I would like to see him go to a gym like AKA, American Top Team, to hone his craft a little more. I think the UFC is a big-time show. You need to go to big-time camps. But all the fights he put on this year were exciting and awesome, and this was the first one. In the co-main event, we saw the brutal debut of Valentina Shevchenko coming down to flyweight, destroying, I can't even say her name, Priscilla Cachoeira. 113 strikes to 12 speaks wonders about this fight. 95 significant strikes to 2. This was a mauling. It led kind of to the demise of Mario Yamasaki. I know there was a lot before that too. Derek Lewis versus Travis Brown was one that comes to mind. In no way was this the beginning of his downfall, but it was surely the end in the UFC for Yamasaki. And this is the one that was crazy to me. Okay, now listen to this, because where we are now is going to be a little bit crazy. So on this card, to open the fight night Machida versus Anders, we had Thiago Santos versus Anthony Smith. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that's the same Thiago Santos that just finished Jimmy Manuwa at light heavyweight. Now, this fight was at middleweight. Anthony Smith is the same fighter that we saw destroy Shogun Rua, Rashad Evans, and beat Volkan Ozdemir, who is now in the top echelons of the division. Now, let me tell you, this fight was at middleweight. I know Santos fought at middleweight, and I know Smith fought at middleweight, but it's pretty crazy to know that these two bombers in the light heavyweight division started the year at middleweight, and Thiago Santos won the fight by TKO. Smith is ranked 3, Santos is ranked 7, but Santos actually won the fight by a stoppage, nonetheless, in the second round. It's just as crazy that both guys, they rise so fast, and that I love both of these guys. They fight amazing. They're crazy fighters. They love to fight, and they're both going to have 2019 campaigns near the top of the division, and I'm excited. We already actually have Santos's fight booked. He's fighting, his name fades my memory, but we actually do have him fighting soon. So we're actually going to wrap up this video in February, and we're going to go on for the future. This might be a long series. If you guys knew, January wasn't that big. The Ngannou-Miocic fight was probably the biggest fight this year. I'm just trying to see if maybe there's another massive fight. Yeah, no, that was probably the biggest fight of these 2 months. We're going to start off next video at UFC 221, Romero versus Rockhold, which actually wasn't supposed to be Romero versus Rockhold, but we'll get into that after. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy the content you see here on the channel, please drop a like. It just makes my day. You don't even need to sub. But if you want to sub, I release a lot of more content like this all the time. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you're watching in the day, have a great day. If you're watching at night, have a great night. And peace out, guys.